Hey guys, and welcome to Pheas Software. Today I'm going to be doing a disassembly for repairs and maintenance on this CYMA CM077F. Hey guys, and welcome back. If you do enjoy this content today, please do remember to like, comment and subscribe. Those interactions help me get seen by the YouTube algorithms, help the channel grow. Linktree link down below will take you to all of my socials, including my Discord. The join button down below will take you to channel memberships. Totally optional, really appreciated, 99p a month. Support the channel, custom videos, giveaways, private chat area in my Discord, all that good stuff. So let's get cracking because I'm excited, and my little extra light that I've added recently is also telling me that its battery is not very happy. So first of all then, we're going to get rid of the set screw I have undone. I needed a T6. So I usually use Torx head on these bits because it just makes life easier for myself. So I'm just going to undo that. Just more of a demonstration point. It is just a 14mm negative under there. So I'll leave that off because it's going to get swapped out anyway. Next thing, I'm going to come to this part. We're going to flip this up. I'm going to lift this upper handguard up and out, and we have got a compression spring. Now that will sit like that. It should go flexing outwards. That's to make sure that basically it puts compression on this part to help retain it and stop it moving about too much. We've then got a little, I was going to say a little handle, but we've got a little set screw in there. Looks like it's a bigger screw. And somebody, hopefully isn't there. Nope. Somebody's stolen my Torx 8. I need to find one. Lost my normal T8 bit, so I'm having to use a Torx 8 little mini screwdriver I've got, but that loosened that up. I should be able to take that forward now. Might need a bit more loosening up. There we go, just a bit more loosening up to take it forward. This handguard then just wiggles forward and out. And then we're into the position now. We'll take the dust cover off. I'm going to push this button forward here and lift that up and out. So that's just a rod on a spring. Lower the selector, and then the charging handle will just come back and lift out. Nice and easy. Next thing we've got is I'm going to take it off camera. I've got 2 pins here. One here, and it looks like the teeth are on this side. So I'm going to punch this one out this way. This one, the teeth, I think are this side as well, so I'm going to punch them both out this way. So I'll be back in a second. Okay, so I was right on both accounts. The my phone's moved a little bit. There we go. The pinned teeth were both on the right hand side on both of those pins, which then should mean that this should wiggle forward now. It says, yeah, just a little bit stiff obviously from the paintwork and everything. Might just need a little bit of extra wiggling, and all I'm trying to do is expose a little grub screw in the front of there. There we go. So it was just quite a stiff fitting. Probably got another Torx 8 there. It is. Now I have learnt on some of these models, they double. Nope, they haven't doubled. Oh, let me just check. Nope. This should now start to release this, so I need to remove these out, and I need to remove this plate in the bottom there. So first ones, I'm going to use Phillips head screws to get these 2 screws out here in the back of the hop unit. Again, make sure you're keeping everything together and separate so you know where it's all come from. There we go, and then flip it over. I'm going to get these out as well underneath here. That plate then comes loose and out, and then this whole assembly then comes loose, and I can slide our outer barrel off. I can then angle my hop unit. Notice that the adjuster has come all the way back, so the hop's technically fully on there. I can slide that out. So let's have a look down into the hop unit. So fully on. Let's have a look. I don't know how well I can see that. There, more or less. Fully on. It doesn't go north. It doesn't seem, well, no, it's probably nearly a quarter of the barrel is possibly taken on. Now, it barely needed sort of like that much to do 2.5s. It's mostly clean more at this end. That it's probably looks just a little bit mucky, so I'll probably give that a clean before I take it out to run it. I'm just going to tighten these two screws down ever slightly, just because this adjustment arm is a touch loose, and I don't want that to unwind. See what I mean? It's just a bit too easy. I might even put a little washer under this screw just to help compress that against this adjustment lever. Again, just to create that tension so that the arm can't adjust easily, because I don't want my hop unwinding. I'm then going to find there is a lip around this. There, I can see there's a little lip there that I can get a flathead under. So what this is just a little cap, and I prefer when they put a cap on, because what it means underneath is that there is a proper Phillips head style screw underneath, which is a much better way of retaining a selector. So I'll just remove that screw. Now it's bringing a bit of assembly with it. So there's my selector. There's a silver and a brass sort of cam barrel thing. I'll discuss those when we're reassembling. We're going to remove the base of the pistol grip now, which requires another bit. Good guess. So again, it is an Allen or a hex head, but I've gone for a Torx because it grabs better and tends not to round out. So I've gone for a Torx 15. Put that in. Click it the right way. I'm going to keep the little screw in there. That's come off in one piece quickly and easily. There's my metal bushings in there. There's my CYMA standard motor, my standard CYMA wiring, and this now will slide out. What I am going to do is I'm going to put my thumb on these bits here, because otherwise they'll just fall off. So get our body out of the way. Now, I did say I would comment on, you can get, I can see there, down into the stock tube. So down in the bottom there is a way to feed wiring round from the back of the gearbox down into that stock tube. So you can, if you wanted, wire this to the stock tube. I need to remember to put that comment on the other video. This is our selector assembly, or part of our selector assembly. It connects through to this side. So we're just going to lift that up and off. That up and off. This we need our screwdriver for, our Phillips. Now I've just clamped it down. Probably clamp it from the other side. I've got my thumb there because it's connected to two parts there that will try and move. So I'm just going to clamp that down. Apologies for being clumsy. Trying to do it in midair is not an easy thing to do. Put them back up there with that, those there with that. It is a quick change spring, but you've still got to lift the gearbox up out of the body to do it. So to change it, it's push in a quarter turn in either direction. There goes the spring guide. There is my spring. Very oily. I've got a substantial beefy metal spring guide with bearings, which is good. So what that does is, as the spring tries to compress, it wants to twist. The bearings allow that to happen, keeping it a little bit more consistent, and the spring health also, I am led to believe. If that is any different and you know different, please comment down below and let me know. I'm going to push the other side of this selector through and out of the way. We'll put that back shortly. Excuse me. This little clip here is going to come out of the way. You should be able to use your fingers just to get it, but if not, get a little flathead. Just get enough purchase underneath it to just flip it up and over the way. I always tend to forget to put those back. Next thing, I've got this strip across the top. Again, I might just need to get a flathead and wedge it in there just to effectively get it past this little notch here. There we go. As soon as it's over, it just slides off. Be careful that these clip parts don't catch and basically rag and expose wiring. That's out of the way. and then which was holding the top together, and then we're just going to remove all these screws. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 screws there. Keep them in the right order because they tend to be at least a couple of different lengths. And the beauty is here is that the compression is now gone, which is one of the harder parts to mess with and tackle with a CYMA gearbox. So those 2 screws so far, they're off to the side here. Those are already 2 different lengths. When you are taking these screws out, the ones that hold the motor cage to the lower gearbox, those are a different length. That's 3 screws, 3 different lengths. These 2 from down here are slightly different style screws, usually, and are significantly longer again. They're just long full threaded. There's usually like a blank section of no threads and then threads at the bottom. But those are longer than the main than the other screws. Get those out of the way separately. And then last but not least, this screw here. Now the trigger assembly in a version 3 is what makes this so difficult to put together. Now on this particular gearbox, those 2 screws were the same, those 2 were different. So I'll pull that out, that can go out of the way. If I want to change the motor, I have to disconnect the wires. There are a couple of screws in there and this just hinges open. There's lots of other videos about that online. And we're just going to anchor this open. The trigger's going to pop probably and go everywhere. The cylinder head is, there we go, it's stuck in the top half. So we've got quite a generous sloshing of lubricant there. Don't make the joke, Pheas, don't make the joke, don't make the joke, don't make the joke. Little bit of mess in our greaser. I'll probably clean that out at some point. It's quite a good coating of oil over all of this section, but not necessarily on the gears down here. So we've got fairly standard looking gears. An attempt has been made to shim. There's obviously some shims about. It did sound smooth, it did sound quiet. So obviously was well enough. It is a traditional V3 style gearbox, so anything MOSFET wise will be absolutely happy in there. We'll check the quality of the compression. So it is obviously blue parts. We've got plastic teeth piston in there. Let's have a look. Blue cylinder head, blue tappet, blue nozzle. So blue cylinder head, piston head there. So what I'm going to do is, it is vented. I'm going to put my finger over the end. This is a bit loose, so it might not seal very well. And basically what I'm looking for is airlock, basically, that I'm getting solid. Oh, I am. That is able to move about a little bit, which is probably going to be helped by it being locked back into the gearbox. But I am getting pretty good until it pushes this out. I'm getting pretty good airlock on that. I don't expect I'll get much better with that, as good, because it is just a plastic one. There's no O-ring on it. There's still a lot of pressure in there, and we want as good air compression as possible to obviously mean that the spring can do, you can have as weak a spring as possible to get the FPS that you want, because then it puts everything under less stress and duress, increasing reliance and things like that, and sort of decreases the battery's effort, the motor's effort, and things are better if you've got a good air seal. Things can just run a little bit nicer with less pressure on everything. To reassemble it then, the trigger or the gears, we've got this gear underneath. Luckily so far we've got the anti-reversal latch there, so it's spurred off a little spring. It should be pushing, the spring should be pushing it that way. So I'm just going to hold it open. I've compressed it with my thumb. You can see it's still turning. I'm going to drop this gear in. I want it to click. I want this post here to be about this position, so sort of between 2 and 3 o'clock on the clock, just so then it's not pulling on the tappet plate, which I'll show you in a minute. Now this switch block here has jumped up, and hopefully I'll lift this up. You can see the little spring here has come off this hook here, so I'm just going to have to get that will do, Christmas cracker screwdriver. Do other countries get Christmas crackers with screwdrivers in, or is it just like an England thing? And if you did get a Christmas cracker this year for Christmas with a screwdriver in, comment down below and tell me. Was it one of those little cool ones where it's the 3 little ones? So, hook that back on there. Hook the spring on there. So as I pull the trigger, it's pulling it back nicely. That's what we want. Put that brown back there. The trigger, it's, oh, I thought I got away with it. Nope. There we go. So we're doing the trigger. So let me lift that up. So there's my trigger block. There's my little trigger. That just drops in there, and I'll drop that back down. There is our cut-off lever that will jump this little trolley bit up off our trigger to cut off single shot. When it's on auto, it's just held up, so the gearbox just keeps spinning until we let go of our trigger. So let's move that back. So it will sit, hopefully you can see this, there's like a gap in this railing here. This trigger block will sit flush down into that. You can see hopefully clearly that it's sat down into that gap there. And then this spring is just going to go nicely onto there. In fact, before I do that, so the trigger and this part, so you've got this little angled part. So when you pull the trigger, it actually moves this. So I'll put it in there. Oop, missed a little bit. So as I pull the trigger, this system is hinged, and basically as I pull this, it hinges this to push on the trigger forward. And our actual trigger itself sits on, I'll take that off, this spring. So this spring here has got a shorter arm on it, and it's got a longer arm on it. The longer arm needs to go around that trigger like that. So in that orientation, slide it in there. Oops. There we go. Slide it in there. And again, longer arm, the shorter one. Now the shorter arm, lift this up, is going to sit, there's two holes here. The silver part of the trigger sits in that, the main trigger sits in that one, and there's a teeny tiny little hole in that corner right there. That is where that little spring is going to go and sit. I was going to say happily, but it never sits in there happily. In fact, it sits in there quite unhappily and likes to just spring out at a moment's notice whenever it feels like it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put that spring back on that trolley first. So that's now spring loaded. I'm now going to bring in my compression assembly. So the nozzle and the tappet plate are linked together, so they move together. The cylinder head is sat almost flush with the front of that, and the teeth should be the piston should be pointing down towards the tappet. I'm going to drop that in place. In fact, I'm going to put the spring on this front post there. There's a little post there. I'm going to put the spring on there, and I'm going to pull that assembly back. Now, what I need to do is, because this is not very tight to this, I'm just maneuvering that around. And what I'm aiming to do, there we go, got it in place. Hold my thumb down. Now, underneath here, if I run my finger along there, I should feel that the cylinder is basically flush against the gearbox at both that bit there and that bit there. And this, there's one of those on each side of this is sat on a lug in there. So I know, because I can't move that at all, it's sat right. And the runner on this side, there's one on the other side, it's sat on this track here, and I can feel that that's in the right orientation. So we're doing good. I want that post there so it's not pulling on this tappet plate, otherwise it makes it more difficult to go together. And then last but not least, I'm going to assemble my trigger like that. And then what I need to try and do is, in fact, what I'm going to do is I always put the little post in its little hole first. And then I'm going to drop this part down into the hole of the spring, and then angle it all back and round. So it's now in its little spring. I've angled it round. I might have to quite forcibly wiggle it about. Now, it's under compression, it's going to try and spring out. I'm going to bring the top of the right hand side of the gearbox in. I'm going to roll it on from the front, and you can see that's not going to let it in, so I've just wiggled that into position. There we go. Now, I was just going to say the gears are not quite in position, but they've just popped themselves into position. And then to help me keep it compressed, I'm just going to wiggle that on there. That's going to help that compress. Now, it might have been that I used just a little screwdriver to just pull the gears back into the right position to line them up. But I'm looking for that it's basically flush. I shouldn't have to squeeze it to keep it flush. And if I'm having to squeeze it to hold it shut, something's not lined up right. Now, I can basically put all those screws back in again, back in the right order that I've just taken them all out, which is why it's important to keep them in the right order so you know where they've gone from. So the shortest one goes at the front. I'm going to go straight to the back and put a long one in the back, just so I've got an initial bit of security. Some techs I know like to put this frame back on first. I like to do it last. It literally makes no difference. Put that one in next. This one in next. Then bring the two motor screws in. They should drop almost all the way through until they hit a thread. If they are needing screwing in much long before they've got dropped like most of the way through, then something's not lined up right. Right, that's now back in place. I'm going to bring in the black plastic bit I always forget, and I'm just going to click that on there. I do apologise if my little extra light dies, because it's now gone, the light on it's gone red, that's indicating it's in its last 20% of battery. So that's now clicked in place flush on both sides. Lovely. The spring is going to go in. On this occasion I got one tight coil that sits on the spring. I'm just going to push that in there. The spring guide's going to go in, and I'm just going to push that in there. And it was literally just a quarter turn and they all lock into place. A quarter turn again and it all comes back out. So I'll push that in and it should sit flush against the back of the gearbox. Now we're going to bring in the selector assembly. So I had, wherever I put it, it's there, it's disguised. So I'm going to drop this in from this side, and it's going to specifically, the teeth should marry up like that. So they basically shouldn't be off in any way, shape or form. They should basically marry up tooth for tooth like that. That is the correct way to do it. If you find once you've reassembled it that basically one of the firing modes is not quite working right, then you'll probably find that these teeth are not rightly lined up, which is less common, or it's more likely that these teeth on this side are not married up, which I'll show you in a second. So I'm going to drop this on here, bring in its little Phillips head, drop that on there, tighten that down, and it will lock itself against that. And I can see on the other side it's moving that. This bit is where it gets a little bit trickier. So I'm going to drop this first. There's a little square sort of peg thing. That peg's going to sit in there. That is our physical safety. We're then going to bring the rest of the selector in, and I do that with the teeth. I'm making sure that they're all lined up together, and then I'm going to drop it on this pivot point here and nudge that into that connector there. So I've now got a gun in safe, then you're in auto, and then you're in single shot, and I'm going to move it all the way back again. Now I'm going to have to keep that clamped in position. The last thing to do is to bring my top frame back on. I should have done this before now. Put that under there, and that, again, making sure I'm not catching and damaging anything, although there is heat shrink on there to protect it. You might need to just tap that over that last post. Clicked in there, I can see that little post in there. This is locked in, and now I can drop this back into my body. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep this clamped in my hand like that to keep those in position. So I've just wiggled it about, again, making sure that those teeth stay married up together at the start there. What is there? There we go, that's dropped in place. It's still in safe. Now what I like to do at this point is I initially bring the selector assembly, the selector switch back in. So we've got this little brass tube and we've got this silver part. This silver part is more important. So there's a little notch on one side, and that little notch matches with that little peg in there. So if I drop that in there, it will sit in there nicely. It doesn't go anywhere. I then drop the brass barrel through, and then bring my selector on, which will only sit sort of like one right correct orientation, and then I drop that in. Now at the minute, all I'm going to do is just tighten that down just a little bit, not fully tighten it, just enough to sort of grab, and it helps to secure the gearbox in the right place and keeps things nice and sorted. And then what I'm looking for in there is that the wiring isn't being caught anywhere. Yeah, generally speaking, a lot of gear bodies, you get like a cutout down here for the wiring to sit in. So look for one. There didn't appear to be, or doesn't appear to be one. It tends to be a bit more open. It's come thin a bit there, so I'll leave it there like that. So we're then going to bring in the pistol grip. So I'm going to bring that in. Now what I need to do is make sure that the wiring stays mostly in this little runner here. That keeps it from getting crushed. I'm going to bring that in, and that should relatively go flush, and I should be able to see the bottom of the motor cage in there, which I can. Bring that in, get my screwdriver with my Torx 15. I'm unscrewing the cap of my screwdriver. Tighten that down. There we go, nice and solid. I'm getting there. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to slide in my hop and barrel assembly. So that's going to go in that way. I'm going to push the hop all the way in like that and back out. I'm then going to bring my outer barrel assembly back in that way and just slide that back in like that. I'm sure I'm forgetting something. And I'm just going to wiggle it until the holes in the back line up with the holes in the hop unit. There we go. There we go. That's all lined up. I can see that the grub screw, set screw marking is there. First thing I'm going to do is, because it's going to make my life a lot easier, is I'm going to flip that over. I'm going to put this plate back in underneath here. So I'm just going to drop that in, and I'm just going to get the two screws, and I'm going to screw that back into there, and that's going to help retain things backwards a little bit. Now, if you're struggling to line it up, probably means that you need to push the outer barrel back a little bit. So you need to push backwards that way a little bit, because it's probably not lined up properly. There we go, that's that. I can extend the hop again. I'm going to bring these two screws back into here and screw those in there. That's one. Might need to just pull the wiring out of the way a little bit there. Missed. There we go. Take the hop fully off. Next thing I need to do is I need to bring that set screw back into there. So I've got my T8. There's my little grub screw, set screw. I can see the markings are in there in the right place. I just might need to push it back a little bit. So I'm just going to drop that in there. Get that in there. Tighten that down. That keeps that nice and solid. Next thing, I'm going to wiggle that forward. I'm going to wiggle this back, and it should just slide into there. The pins are going to go back in this way with the teeth on this side. So I'm just going to push that into there. That needs to come forward ever so slightly. Now, and what I'm looking for in there is that the hole, there we go, look, it should be lined up through there. I shouldn't be able to see anything blocking the way, which means it's all lined up, which means that should mostly drop in, and then I can just tap that in and it should just go in nicely. Just take that off camera to finish that off. That's one. So there we go. So this pin is basically flush. This one protrudes a little bit at either side. Absolutely fine. Next thing I can do is I can bring my charging handle back in. I can drop it in at the back there. It says, there we go. And it slides back forward. I can bring the spring and rod that just fit into there. There's like a little hole in there. That's now spring loaded. And my cover can go back on. There we go. Next I bring in the lower handguard. I'm just going to take that out of the way. That just clicks in at the back there and pushes on. And that's as far back as it really needs to go. Oh, that's gone the wrong way. Let's take that out. That needs to sit like that. So I'm going to link that into the body. This should come, and the little grub screw should set in down into that little hole that we noticed earlier. Get my Torx 8. There we go. Finally, we've got that little compression clip there on the back, so I'm just going to put that on at the front. I'm going to open this lever up here at the front to let that down and in, close that, and then the muzzle brake can go on when I'm ready. And that's it. The last thing then I haven't done is tighten that down. We should have safe, auto, semi, and my little cap can go back in there. And that's it. We're done. We have done a disassembly and reassembly with the CM077F for repairs and maintenances. Please remember to like, comment and subscribe. And I will see you next time. Bye.